Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another solo show of the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast, where today I'm going to be chatting with you guys about working with family members. This is something that a lot of us do more as new coaches when we're just getting our feet wet, getting comfortable with the coaching process. We might take on a few family members to kind of get familiar and create some ease in our approach, see how it's going to work with clients going forward. But then a lot of us also coach family members, the more skilled we get, right? Family members come up with health issues, and we're there to support them should they want and need it on an ongoing basis. So it's not just something that we do as new coaches. I think any of us that are passionate about what we do are always there to help people that we love, but it can become a sticky circumstance in some instances, right? Because there's a lot of emotion there that can charge both us as the coach, but also our family members who are maybe in the client role. And I'm going to share with you some tips, 6 of them, that I think can be really important to keep in mind as you work with family members to ensure that it's a really uplifting process for the both of you, right? And that there isn't resentment at the end. There isn't a lot of, hurt from one side or the other. And that it's really an experience where both of you are able to both grow as a coach, grow as the quote unquote client, and have a really healthy relationship through the work together. So first one is going to be to distinguish between your role as the coach and your role as the family member. Right. I've said to family members all the time, I am going to coach you, but I want you to know that first you are my ex, right? You're my aunt, you're my sister, you're my mom, and what we accomplish or don't accomplish together in this space will never change that for me. If you decide you no longer want to do that's okay. If you don't do it exactly the way I suggest, that's okay. This process is yours, and I will still love you and care and cherish our relationship far beyond this process together. As long as you want this, I am here to help and guide you. But you are first, right, my loved one. But distinguishing between that, right, and the fact that you are there to guide them, to educate them, and not to fix them. You're not there to fix them. And frankly, I don't think any family member or any client is served well by your approach to kind of like, let me fix you. Like, it's really important for me to fix you. One, a client or a family member can just internalize that as I'm broken, right? There's a huge difference between the energy of let me fix you and let me hold space for you to heal, right? Very, very big difference. You are whole, but you have lots of imbalances that we want to work on so that you can live the most vital life possible. Versus you are broken in all of these ways, and I have a lot of tools that can fix you, right? It's very different energy. One just allows you to create the space for them to grow and heal on their own. And the other kind of puts you a little bit on a pedestal and them as kind of the broken individual beneath you, right? And so I think this distinguishing factor between coach, family member, right, is really important in the beginning, and also setting the expectation that you are here to just simply educate and guide them through this process, that they don't need to be fixed and you're not here to do that, right? So that's number 1. Number 2 is to set a clear boundary. And this is really important for you, but also for them. For you, right, it allows that ensures you to show up fully with all the energy and enthusiasm that you need to. If they're, texting you 24 hours a day and draining you and, creating some sort of stress because they either haven't had a boundary set or they're going with outside of the boundary, you're going to build a little bit of resentment. You might get a little bit burnt out from working with them. And it's not your job to turn yourself into a pretzel to help somebody else. It's your job to help, again, guide them. But there should be a boundary, again, to protect you, but also them. If they understand that the boundary is they can text you, anytime after 2 p.m. but before 8 with questions that they have, or that they're more than welcome to text you, but just understand that you might be busy with your regular clientele or your family. and you'll get back to them as soon as possible. That's great. Whatever the boundary looks like for you may be different, right? But it's really important to set one so that it doesn't create, when we don't set a clear boundary, and boundaries are not meant to keep people out or keep emotion out. They're actually meant to perfectly contain it and hold it, right? Think of like a boundary as a bowl, right? We're talking about how can we hold this relationship, this working container in a way that serves both you and me versus like a boundary being like, I'm over here, here's the wall, and you're over here. A boundary doesn't divide. It perfectly supports what we're trying to achieve. And if we are trying to achieve some sort of health and wellness achievements, right? It's really important that there's not a whole lot of emotion involved with expectations. They're not expecting you to answer their every text message as soon as they send one. You're not necessarily expecting them to do everything perfectly just because you said, right? So setting boundaries for what you expect and what you think is going to be the best way for you to work together allows you to show up with full integrity and energy, and allows the client to receive that and to take accountability for their side of the agreement here, right? They're the coach. They're the client. A lot of times we'll work with our family members that become kind of our clients, and they either aren't paying for our services or they're maybe paying at a discounted rate. And sometimes without that financial investment, the compliance can be a little spotty. And you have to understand, right, that maybe they're not in the place to make all the commitments and all the changes that you want or suggest that they do, right? Again, setting the boundary that these are my suggestions. You're going to do with them what feels right. I'm here to support you through the process. And then there's not a lot that can happen in between the lines that hasn't gone unsaid, right? So boundary setting is super important. And this will look different from case to case, right? From family member to family member. Maybe you have someone who's really good at respecting your time and your space and your energy, and maybe someone who's not. So you may need to set different boundaries with different family members. But either way, I think the container setting, right, or boundary setting is a really important part of the process because it sets, and this is true with regular clients as well, right? But more so, I believe, with family members, it just sets the process up for success rather than there being charged emotion in the middle. Okay. Number 3 is empathy over. So empathy over identifying with their problems. So a lot of family members may have had ongoing chronic conditions for a really long time, right? Let's just say it's an aunt with diabetes, and she's had diabetes for 20 years, and you've always known her as the overweight aunt who's had diabetes, right? You can have lots of empathy for that, right? And holding some sort of compassion for the fact that she's gone through that versus over-identifying with her for her struggle, right? Because you've been used to it just as long as she has. But clients who've been dealing with chronic conditions tend to over-identify with the fact that this is who they are, this is part of their life. And oftentimes that is a huge limiting belief factor that needs to be addressed within themselves. And if you can separate yourself out of that over-identification, it allows them to do it a little bit easier. So you want to provide empathy, right? Empathize with what they're going through, empathize for the fact that making some of these lifestyle modifications might be hard, eating differently might be hard, exercising when they've never exercised before may be hard, but really providing empathy and not over-identifying with their identification, right, of whatever imbalances are going on. It allows you to detach from the outcome, right? You're not so attached if you're not over-identifying with their whatever it be, let's say diabetes, right? It's one of the things where the more we kind of wrap ourselves around it, the harder it is to let go of. And you want them to see that you don't think that's all they are. You actually see them as being able to be the aunt that moves freely and doesn't have pain and is in control of her hunger cues and is living a vital life. You want to hold that place of that vision for your family member, for your client, in a way that they can see it themselves. Because again, with chronic conditions, they can have gone on for quite some time. And what happens is it becomes part of that person's identity. And when I over-identify with something, it's really hard for the physical body to let go of that attachment and let go of the fact that the body has kind of held on to that one identity for so long. And your ability to empathize with them, but to see them as something different and tell them that you do. Like, I see you being able to lose the 40 pounds that you've wanted to lose for 20 years. I see you as living a really happy, optimal, vital life. I see you as being able to play with your grandkids and not get tired and having to sit down, being able to hold a vision for them when they may not be able to hold it for themselves. And again, this is something that can be super helpful with regular clients. It's just a little bit more emotional when it's someone that we've known or loved for a really long time. And it can get a little bit more convoluted as far as how we're able to separate from it. Okay. Number 4 is self-care. Now, I talked about this on my last solo show, and self-care, I'm putting this in the category of just simply taking care of yourself. Okay. When you are the health coach to the paying clients, when you are the health coach in your home, when you are also then the health coach for family members who may be a little bit more needy or may have more access to you, right? That's usually the difference between family members and paying clients, right? A paying client might have your information for email, right? And they may be able to email you, but maybe you say, 1 email a week to check in, but they don't have your cell phone number. A family member may be able to call you, or they may be able to text you, and that's more access. So if you start to feel like too many people have access to you and you're starting to get resentful and you feel like all you're doing is taking care of everybody else, that is a really good sign that you are not taking well enough care of yourself. Whenever I've got to a place of burnout or resentment or really just extreme overwhelm, and I've been there, and as an empath, as a coach, as someone who is always hardwired to the needs of everybody else, it can be really easy to get to that place. And if you're not taking care of yourself, you'll get there faster, because what will happen is you'll start to feel like you're pouring from an empty cup, and the resentment will build, and you will have less wherewithal to help those that you love. And then that depletion is going to be harder for you to get out of the hole to then take care of yourself. If you do it little by little every day and stay ahead of it, rather than trying to correct it, you have a much greater chance of showing up, again, as the health coach in your home, as the health coach for your business, and as the family member that's able to kind of hold space for somebody else's healing in a way that it's not draining you and feeling overwhelming. If you are not taking care of yourself, you will get there. It's just a matter of when and how. If you're young, it will take longer. If you're a little bit older, it might be sooner, right? But you absolutely have to take care of yourself to take care of someone else, right? All of the cliche sayings, you can't pour from an empty cup, put your own, oxygen mask on first. They absolutely all apply. If you're not eating well, if you're not moving your body, if you're not drinking your water, if you're not sleeping, if you're not prioritizing your own well-being, it is going to be really hard for you to prioritize everybody else's without getting resentful or overwhelmed. So self-care, number 4, is a big one. Okay, number 5 is setting realistic expectations with results. This is a little different than boundaries. I think that setting realistic expectations is important, more so when it becomes a family member relationship, because they can kind of think that like, ooh, she's going to help me, right? Like I'm going to get better. She wants this for me. I want this. they're not thinking of it necessarily as like this contracted process that maybe a client that comes to you within your company as a paying client, they might enter that expectation with a little bit more of understanding that it's a process. But a family member might think, it's great. She's going to tell me everything I need to know. I'm going to be able to get into it faster, just get these results. And so being realistic with the expectations that they should have for their progress is really important, because one, it allows you to give them the power to execute on the process in general and not get frustrated with how quickly or not quickly the results come, because you've already set the expectation that this isn't a quick fix. The aunt who got diabetes, right? That's been in the making. It's been 20 years. You're not going to change her diabetic numbers in 4 weeks, right? She might start eating salads and working out and think like, oh gosh, everything should be better now. It just doesn't happen that way. Chronic conditions take time to develop, and in the same way, they take time to correct. And so it's really important that you set the expectation that you're not offering them a quick fix. You also are not offering to do the work for them, because when you do that, you take the biggest gift you can give them away. And it's them learning to trust themselves. I'm like getting emotional because I'm thinking of a family dynamic where that was a really hard moment in time for me, and to respect everybody that was involved, I'm not going to give many details, but I was helping a family member who wanted my help more than anything. She believed in everything that I was doing, but family members who loved her did not agree with the advice that I was giving. And it caused a lot of strain in our family, in lots of different angles. And this family member I loved more than anything, was like a mother to me. And so it can be a really emotional process. At the end, that family member needs to want it just as much as you want it for them. They have to feel just as comfortable with the choices that they're making as you do. And if you can set realistic expectations for what that will look like, you are giving them the power. They need the power, right? It's not about your control. It's not about your choice. In the end, the family member went in a more medical route, and I had to see that as absolutely a beautiful part of their experience and journey. That is what they needed to do. That was the next step for them. That did not mean that I didn't do my job. That did not mean that I did anything wrong. It didn't mean that there was anything other than this was the next step for them in their journey. But the process can be emotional when you're helping family members, and it's really important to maintain your own emotional well-being as long as theirs, and separating yourself from the expectation and the outcome. Being able to just hold the vision for them, and they get to do everything after that, right? You are not forcing them to do it. There's no attachment to the outcome, because then they get their actions decide how good you feel inside. And that's when it becomes emotional. So really, really important. And then my last tip is, we've talked a lot about how to like protect yourself as the coach. But my last tip is to respect their process and their autonomy. A lot of what we were just talking about, right? There will be a time where maybe a suggestion for them that you make for them doesn't really resonate. Or you might make a suggestion that actually their doctor doesn't agree with. Or you might make a suggestion that they just can't bring themselves to commit to, right? Maybe you suggest exercising 3 times a week, and your family member is just adamant that they can't, they won't, they're in too much pain, they can't see the forest through the trees, they're just not going to do that. You have to respect that it's their process, it's their autonomy, it's their way of working through the journey, right? I mean, it's like the butterfly story of like the butterfly when the caterpillar's in the cocoon, right? And it's the process of them having to break through the cocoon on their own that actually builds the strength in their wings. If we just cut the cocoon, right, now they don't have any strength in their wings. It's no different than when we're trying to help someone along in their health and wellness journey. We can hold their hand. We can offer them all the support. But what we aren't going to do is do it for them or feel responsible when they don't want to do it for themselves. It is not your responsibility for them to choose them. It's their responsibility for them to choose themselves. And they may choose themselves in a way that doesn't align with your suggestions, right? That in them choosing themselves, it might be making a different choice. It might mean getting a surgery. It might mean going on a certain medication. It might mean, moving. Choosing themselves may not always align with your recommendation, and that is still okay because your value does not fall in the hands of their choices. You helped them maybe 30% along the way. Maybe that was all you were meant to do in their process, and now something else is kind of taking them along to their next path. So really, really important to protect your own emotional well-being. It's really important to give them the autonomy and the respect for their path and what they choose. Okay, so those are my top 6 recommendations when it comes to working with family members. Again, distinguish your role as a health coach versus your role as a family member. Set clear boundaries and the container for how you're going to work with them. Prioritize your own self-care. Empathize with them without over-identifying with their diagnosis or their condition. Set realistic expectations for how the process will go, and then also respecting their autonomy and their process for working through things. I think if you do those, you will find that working with family members can feel far more enjoyable overall and less stressful and less overwhelming. And I'm sure there's many family members that a lot of you listeners have already helped, and I'm sure that there's lots of family members still waiting for your care. And so however you can show up for those you love, I think is beautiful. And if you apply some of these suggestions, you'll see some success. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Integrative Health Coach Success Podcast. And I'll look forward to talking to you all next time.